The morning fog still clung to the granite face of El Capitan like it didn't want to let go. It turned the towering cliffs into a ghost, looming silent and gray above the forest below. And somewhere out there, Vera Wilder's brother had vanished, 3 years ago, without a trace. No body. No gear. Just silence. Vera had come to live inside that silence. When Benjamin Wilder and his best friend Miles disappeared during a climb in October, search teams spent 10 days combing the mountain. Helicopters, dogs, dozens of volunteers. They'd found an abandoned tent at their campsite, sleeping bags untouched, food still sealed, water bottles full. Like the boys had stepped out and simply, never returned. The search turned up nothing. And eventually, it stopped. But Vera never did. She kept paying the rent on Benjamin's apartment long after hope made any sense. She couldn't bring herself to box up his things. Her parents had grieved, tried to move on. But Vera stayed behind. Emotionally, spiritually, anchored to a place on the map where her brother had last been seen. And then, came the call. It was a park ranger, voice calm but clipped. A hiker's dog had uncovered human remains near El Capitan. The dog wouldn't stop barking at a boulder field, an area not far from where Benjamin and Miles had last camped. They were calling next of kin. They needed someone to help identify anything personal. The world blurred. Grief came rushing back like it had just happened yesterday. But under that grief, was a tremble of hope. Maybe, just maybe, it was Benjamin. Maybe this nightmare was finally coming to a close. Vera drove the winding 2-lane road back into Yosemite, the same road she had taken dozens of times before. She'd dropped Benjamin off here after climbs, picked him up sunburnt and glowing, gear clattering in her trunk. She knew every turn, every marker. But today, the drive felt longer. Heavier. When she arrived at the ranger station, the air was thin with altitude and tension. Yellow tape fluttered in the breeze beyond the tree line. Park investigators moved through the rocks with quiet precision. No news crews yet. No press. Just silence and protocol. She stepped out of the vehicle and was met by a woman with gray-streaked hair pulled back tight, Lieutenant Chen. "Thank you for coming, Ms. Wilder," the woman said softly. Vera nodded. "You said, you found someone?" Chen led her to a makeshift evidence table beneath a pop-up tent. Spread across it were clear plastic bags, a faded blue jacket, torn at the shoulder, a climbing harness with dull red webbing, and a water-damaged wallet. Vera leaned in, squinting through the plastic at the ID inside. Miles Andrew Reeves. Dark hair. Slight smile. Head slightly tilted. That same photo Benjamin used to tease him about. "That's Miles," Vera whispered. "That's definitely him." Her chest caved in. It was grief and relief all tangled into one impossible knot. One friend found. But only one. Chen watched her carefully. "We're still examining the remains, but from the gear and wallet, we're confident. The fall was likely caused by a rock slide. Maybe during their descent. The terrain's been unstable since that winter." Vera nodded, but her eyes were fixed on the boulder field just beyond the tape. Something didn't feel right. Not about the location, not about the timing. She turned slowly. "You said a hiker found him?" Chen nodded. "Her dog, actually. Barking non-stop at a crevice beneath a split boulder. Right around that ridge." Vera's brow furrowed. She remembered that stretch of land. 3 years ago, it had been marked inaccessible due to instability. Search teams had avoided it. She remembered it being fenced off with warning signs. Then Chen added something that made her go still. That area was cleared 3 years ago by a local rancher. He owned the land just outside the park. Said it was safe to pass through. His name was Vernon Hartley. The name didn't ring any bells. Not yet. But something about the way Chen said it, the quiet note behind her voice, made the air feel colder. Vera turned toward the cliffs again, letting her gaze rise to the place where the granite met the clouds. Benjamin had promised to be back by Sunday night. He'd dropped off his spare keys, told her they'd be trying a new route. Said Miles wanted to try that new Thai place after. But Sunday came. Then Monday. Then Tuesday. And nothing. And now, 3 years later, they'd found Miles. Half buried in a crevice under a boulder. As if time had sealed him away until someone finally asked the right question. Vera stepped closer to the edge of the taped perimeter. Somewhere out there. Benjamin was still waiting. Or worse, he had never left. The sun was beginning to cut through the morning fog, lighting up the granite face of El Capitan like a slow burn. But the ground below still felt cold. Still felt wrong. Vera stood near the boulder field, watching as investigators moved methodically around the scene. Flags marked evidence, flashlights glinted off rock. Miles had been found here. That was confirmed. But Benjamin, still missing. She heard the rhythmic crunch of boots on gravel before she saw him. A man on horseback was descending the trail, flanked by a slow-moving line of cattle. He rode like he belonged here, like the land recognized him. When he reached the clearing, he dismounted with the ease of a lifelong rancher. He wore a tan Stetson and a button-up shirt rolled to the elbows. His skin was weathered, but his frame was strong. Mid-50s, maybe older. Sheriff Boyd Tanner greeted him first. "Afternoon, Vernon." The man tipped his hat politely. "Heard the helicopters this morning. Something serious?" Boyd nodded. "A hiker found human remains. Likely one of the missing climbers from a few years back." Vernon Hartley's face softened. "The 2 young men, right? I remember that search. Terrible thing." Boyd turned to Vera. "This is Vera Wilder. Her brother Benjamin was one of them." Vernon stepped forward and extended a hand. His grip was firm, his gray eyes direct. "Vernon Hartley. I own the ranch that borders this section of the park. I'm truly sorry for what you're going through, Miss Wilder." Vera thanked him, trying to meet his gaze. But something about him felt off. Not wrong exactly. Just too smooth. Too polite. As the conversation continued, Vernon offered his ranch hands to assist in the search. 6 men, all familiar with the area. He spoke like a man used to solving problems, with resources, with people, with influence. But then he asked something strange. "How old was your brother?" 24, Vera replied. "Family back home? Wife? Kids?" She shook her head, confused. "No. Benjamin was single. He lived for climbing." Vernon nodded slowly. "Sometimes young men get overwhelmed. Responsibilities, expectations. You'd be surprised how many just walk away." It wasn't a weird question on its own. But the tone he used, thoughtful. Like he was solving a puzzle, not offering comfort. He looked at her a little too long, like he was studying her reaction. Boyd cleared his throat. "We looked into every possibility back then. These boys weren't the type to run. Something went wrong." Vernon tilted his head slightly. "If there's anything I can do to help, you let me know. We move cattle through this area all season. My men know every trail." Vera watched him mount his horse again, graceful, controlled. He tipped his hat once more. "I hope you find your brother, Miss Wilder. No one should have to wonder what happened to family." And then he was gone, disappearing down the trail with the cattle trailing behind him like shadows. Later that night, Vera couldn't sleep. She sat in Benjamin's old room, surrounded by the scent of cedar and chalk and sunscreen. Everything was untouched. Just as he'd left it. She opened his desk, more out of instinct than intention. Flipped through the clutter of receipts, old climbing route sketches, folded maps. Then something caught her eye, a manila folder, labeled work stuff. Inside were crumpled pay stubs. Fence repair, general labor. All signed with the same name. Vernon Hartley. The most recent one was dated just 18 days before Benjamin disappeared. $1,200. Cash. Signed in bold, neat handwriting. Vera stared at the slip of paper in her hands, her pulse picking up. Vernon had shaken her hand. Had looked her in the eye. Had asked about Benjamin like he was a stranger. But this proved otherwise. Benjamin had worked for him. More than once. Had trusted him. And Vernon had said nothing. Not even a flicker of recognition. Vera sat frozen at her brother's desk, the quiet pressing in from all sides. She didn't know what Vernon Hartley was hiding. But now, she was sure he was hiding something. The next morning, Vera woke before the sun. Sleep had been shallow, fractured by the same looping thought. Why didn't Vernon say anything, ***? Not a word about Benjamin working for him. Not even a spark of recognition. Just that calm, helpful tone, and those unsettling questions. She needed answers. And she knew exactly where to start. Yosemite Village was buzzing with weekend climbers when Vera pulled into the lot behind the gear shop. The bell above the door chimed, and the scent of chalk dust and canvas hit her immediately, nostalgia mixed with tension. Behind the counter stood Derek, the store's owner. He had a thick beard, sunburnt skin, and a warm familiarity. He'd been part of the original search party. She remembered him carrying supplies up the trail. She remembered the way he hugged her when they'd packed it all in and gone home empty. He looked up from sorting ropes and froze. Vera. I heard about the remains. I'm so sorry. She nodded, not trusting her voice yet. Then, quietly, they think it's Miles. Derek let out a slow breath. God. I always hoped. I mean, not for that, but, closure, you know? Vera pulled out the flyers she'd reprinted the night before, clear, recent photos of Benjamin smiling on cliff ledges, arms draped around Miles, laughing in camp chairs. They're still searching for him. I'm putting these up again. Derek took one and began pinning it to the community board without hesitation. Of course. Anything that helps. Vera hesitated, then asked, do you remember if Benjamin ever mentioned working nearby? For any of the ranches? Derek looked thoughtful, eyes narrowing. Yeah, actually. He and Miles were doing some fence repair jobs the fall they went missing. Said it was decent money. He paused. Benjamin mentioned a rancher, someone who showed them a shortcut to the base of El Capitan. Vera's heart skipped. A shortcut? Yeah. Something about an old cattle trail that cut through private land. Saved them like an hour on the approach. Did he say which ranch? Derek shook his head. No, but there aren't many out there. Hartley's is the biggest by far. The name dropped like a weight between them. You think it was Vernon Hartley? She asked. Derek shrugged. Would make sense. He's always been around. Knows the backcountry better than most. Vera thanked him, her mind already racing. The implications were sharp and immediate. Vernon didn't just employ Benjamin. He directed where Benjamin and Miles went that day. He changed their route. Put them off the main trail, ***. And then acted like none of it ever happened. She left the shop and headed straight to the ranger station. It was quieter than the day before, most of the search teams already back on the mountain. A young woman with a badge that read, Kim, sat behind the front desk. "I'm Vera Wilder," she said. "My brother Benjamin was one of the missing climbers." Kim straightened. "Of course. I've read through the report. I need to see the original case file. The interviews." The ranger hesitated. "We're not technically supposed to." "Please," Vera interrupted. "It's been 3 years. I'm not asking for classified information. I need to know if anyone ever followed up with Vernon Hartley. That name did something." Kim's eyes flicked up. "1 second," she said, typing into the computer. Her brows furrowed. "His name isn't in the report," she said after a moment. "Not in the witness list. Not in the employer list. That's impossible. He paid my brother. I have the stubs." Kim frowned deeper. "Then it's an omission. He should have come up. Especially if he owns land near the disappearance zone." Vera leaned forward. "He was at the site yesterday. He offered help. Spoke like he'd never met Benjamin. Like he only knew him from posters." Kim clicked through more tabs, scrolling fast. Then her face went still. "Wait. I found a mention in an internal memo." She turned the monitor slightly, enough for Vera to read the screen. "Vernon Hartley coordinated access for search teams crossing private land adjacent to Slide Ridge Trail. Provided mapping and assisted with vehicle transport." Kim turned back. "So yes. We did talk to him. He was involved in the first week of the search." Vera felt the blood drain from her face. "He lied," she said quietly. "He acted like he didn't know Benjamin. Didn't even flinch when he saw his picture." Kim leaned back in her chair, suddenly uneasy. "Vernon Hartley is respected around here. Donates equipment. Trains with SAR volunteers. But yeah, if what you're saying is true, this doesn't sit right." It didn't sit right at all. The man had helped organize the first search. Walked the trails with rangers. Shook her hand. Told her he was sorry. Asked about Benjamin's life, like it wasn't something he already knew. Vera walked out of the ranger station into the bright mid-morning sun, but she felt cold. Like a shadow had been following her since that boulder was overturned. Something about that man. That ranch. That shortcut. It had never been part of the plan. And maybe that was the point. The road to Hartley Ranch wound through golden foothills and pine-covered ridges, quiet and sun-drenched like any other morning in the Sierra Nevada. But Vera's grip on the steering wheel stayed tight the whole way. Her mind ran faster than the truck. Every mile that passed, her certainty grew louder. Something is wrong with Vernon Hartley, ***. He had known Benjamin. Paid him. Given him a shortcut that pulled him off the marked trail. And then pretended they were strangers. Now Vera needed answers. Real ones. The stone gateposts at the ranch entrance rose like sentries, topped with rusted lanterns and bearing a curved iron sign, Hartley. She turned off the main road and followed a gravel drive that split through pastures dotted with cattle. The ranch house sat up on a rise, wrapped in an immaculate porch with flags fluttering gently in the breeze. It was too perfect. Vera parked near the steps and rang the doorbell. No answer. She waited. Rang again. Still nothing. The house was silent. No signs of life. No vehicles in sight except her own. But Vernon's property stretched for miles. He could have been out in the backcountry or checking on his cattle. Still. Vera had come too far to turn around empty-handed. She circled around the back of the house, expecting to find someone in the garden, maybe a ranch hand. But again, nothing. Then she spotted a dirt trail leading off behind a row of sheds, winding down through a patch of pine trees. A faint tire track followed it. Something about it felt hidden. Less like a driveway, more like a road not meant to be seen. She followed it. The trees thinned out, and the trail opened into a clearing. And there, half buried in the hillside like a secret, stood a concrete structure. Not a barn. Not a shed. It was old. Military style. Thick-walled. Built to last. No windows. Just a single metal door reinforced with riveted steel. A ventilation pipe jutted from the ground above it, along with what looked like solar panels and a motion-activated security camera mounted on a nearby pole. Its red light blinked once. Then again. The camera was watching. Vera moved slowly, instinctively quieting her steps on the gravel. Her heart thudded in her chest. This wasn't just some leftover storm shelter. This was reinforced. Sealed. And active. She crouched by the door, feeling the chill radiating off the concrete. That's when she heard it, faint, muffled. A voice. She pressed her ear against a low ventilation grate near the ground. Please. The voice was hoarse, broken, barely audible. I can't. I can't anymore. Then came the sound of chains. Not metaphorical. Actual metal, scraping lightly against concrete. Vera's stomach flipped. Then another voice. Calm. Male. You need to accept this as your life now. Her breath caught. That voice. Vernon, asterisk asterisk. The next words were even worse. Fighting only makes it harder on yourself. You know the rules. There was a pause. Just, don't leave me here again, the weaker voice begged. Vera stepped back from the grate like it had burned her. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. Chains. A captive. And Vernon, talking like it was normal. Her hand trembled as she fumbled for her phone. She pressed the screen, called the only number that made sense. Sheriff Boyd Tanner answered after 2 rings. Boyd, it's Vera. I'm at Hartley Ranch. I think someone is being held here. What? I followed a trail behind his house. There's a concrete bunker. And I heard voices. Someone is chained inside. I heard Vernon talking to him, calm, like this has been happening for a while. There was a pause. You're saying you heard Vernon Hartley holding someone captive? Yes. Yes. A man. I swear, he said things like, accept this as your life now. Another pause. Longer this time. Then Boyd's tone shifted. Careful. Controlled. Vera. I know this has been an incredibly stressful few days. Losing your brother, finding out about Miles. I'm worried you might be jumping to conclusions. I'm not, she snapped. Boyd, I heard him. Vernon Hartley is a respected man. Donated half the rescue equipment our team uses. If we go after him based on a hunch, without probable cause. It's not a hunch. I heard someone. Chained up. Begging. I believe you heard something. Maybe it's his older brother, he's got dementia. Sometimes he gets disoriented. Vernon keeps him on the property. Needs supervision. Vera was silent, stunned. Please, Boyd said. Go home. I'll look into it. Quietly. But we can't storm a man's private property on a feeling. He hung up. Vera stared at the bunker. The red light on the camera blinked again. She was alone, standing at the edge of something terribly real. Something no one wanted to see. And someone inside that bunker was running out of time. It was 2 a.m. when Vera parked her car half a mile from the Hartley Ranch gate. Moonless night. No streetlights. No sounds but the crunch of gravel beneath her tires and the low hum of insects hiding in the trees. She killed the engine and waited. The darkness wrapped around her like a warning. But she was beyond warnings now. In the back seat sat Benjamin's old trail camera, infrared, motion-activated, weatherproof. The kind he'd used to film mountain lions and coyotes during backcountry hikes. Tonight, it wasn't for wildlife. She shouldered her bag, checked the straps, and stepped into the woods. The path to the bunker was burned into her mind now. Down the maintenance road. Through the trees. Past the old cattle gate. The concrete structure came into view like a shadow stitched into the hillside, cold, gray, waiting. Vernon's truck wasn't there. At least, it looked like it wasn't. She crept toward a pine tree about 30 feet from the door. It had a thick, ridged trunk, perfect cover. She strapped the camera to it low, angled just enough to catch anyone approaching the bunker. Her hands shook, but the work kept her focused. Buckle. Secure. Test the angle. She turned to leave, and froze. Vernon's truck was back. It was parked behind a cluster of trees on the far side of the structure, hidden just enough to avoid being spotted on approach. No headlights. No engine sounds. Her breath caught. Had he been there the whole time? She ducked behind the tree, slowly inching toward the truck. She didn't want to get close, she just needed to see. Needed to know. A beam from her flashlight swept briefly across the passenger seat, and what she saw made her stomach turn. Fitness magazines. Men on the covers, shirtless, oiled, posed. A small brown bottle next to them. Round. Familiar. Poppers, asterisk asterisk. Her breath hitched. She backed up, pulse racing. The dots connected fast now. Vernon's probing questions. His fixation on Benjamin's looks. His secrecy. She turned to flee, then stopped. A sound behind her. Slow. Heavy. Gravel shifting under boots. She turned. Vernon was standing 10 feet away. His expression was calm. Not confused. Not surprised. Just, cold. Couldn't leave it alone, could you? He said quietly. Vera's mouth opened, but no words came out. She stepped back. He moved forward. I was just checking the trail, she stammered. His eyes didn't move. Sure you were. Then he lunged. His hand clamped over her mouth, and she screamed into it, muffled and wild. His other arm locked around her torso like a vice. She kicked, thrashed, bit down hard into his palm. He growled, pulling back just long enough for her to break free. She ran. Branches tore at her face. She reached her car, yanked the door open, threw herself inside, slammed the lock. He was already there. She grabbed her phone and hit star 911 star. The screen lit up. Ringing. He pounded on the driver's side window. Hard. She screamed, help. I'm at Hartley Ranch, he's. The crowbar came down. Glass exploded. She screamed again as shards flew across her lap. The phone dropped. Vernon reached in, grabbing for the lock. She fumbled for the horn, missed. His hand found the door handle. He yanked it open and grabbed her by the hair, dragging her out onto the dirt. Her knee slammed into the ground. Her phone skittered somewhere into the dark. He flipped her over, pinned her arms. You should have stayed out of it, he muttered, voice shaking with anger. He pulled something from his pocket, plastic zip ties. Standard ranch gear. Useful for fences. Or wrists. She kicked. Screamed. He tightened the ties. She couldn't move. Then, nothing. Darkness. When Vera came to, everything felt wrong. The air was stale. The floor was hard. Concrete. Chains rattled softly in the dark. Her ankle burned. She tried to move, and felt resistance. Cold metal. She was chained. The space around her glowed faintly green, emergency lighting. Shelves lined the walls. Stockpiles of food, water, medical supplies. And in the far corner, someone moved. A figure, lying still on a cot. Thin. Silent. Barely more than bones under skin. She couldn't breathe. "Ben," she whispered. The figure stirred. Turned its head. Hollow cheeks. Sunken eyes. Matted blonde hair. Her brother. Alive. But broken. The air inside the bunker was heavy, thick with mildew, metal, and something far worse, hopelessness. Vera sat on the cold floor, her ankle chained to a pipe. The shackle was tight, no give. Her skin already throbbed where it dug into her bone. But none of that mattered. Across the room, in the far corner, lay her brother. Benjamin. He hadn't moved since she woke up. His body curled inward, like something trying to vanish. Skin stretched over bone. Hair matted, tangled around his face like overgrown roots. His eyes were open but unfocused, haunted. "Ben," Vera whispered, her voice cracking. "It's me. It's Vera." No response. She pulled herself closer, the chain scraping. It gave her maybe 6 feet, enough to sit near the wall. But not enough to reach him. "I'm here now," she said, tears rising. "You're not alone." Still nothing. Then footsteps echoed down the concrete stairs. Vernon. He entered calmly, like a man returning to a project. Not rushing. Not flustered. Just satisfied. He carried a tray, 2 bottles of water and a metal bowl with something gray and soft inside. He walked past Vera without speaking and set the tray on a small table beside Benjamin's cot. "Did he eat today?" Vera asked, voice shaking. Vernon didn't answer right away. Instead, he sat on a folding chair, resting his hands on his knees. "You shouldn't have come back," he said finally. "You could have moved on. Grieved. Like everyone else." Vera's stare hardened. "You lied. You knew him. You gave him that shortcut." Vernon nodded, like she'd just solved a riddle. "He was beautiful," he said softly. "Not just outside, his spirit. Bright. Restless. But kind." He glanced at Benjamin. "I didn't plan to keep him, you know. Not at first. He was supposed to pass through. Work a few weeks, take his money, leave." Vera's heart pounded. What happened to Miles? Vernon's jaw flexed. "He walked in at the wrong time. I'd misread something. Tried to reach out to Benjamin, and he panicked. Pushed me away. Called me a freak." He rubbed his hands together, remembering. "Miles came in swinging. Said he was calling the cops. Said I was going to jail. So I stopped him." "You killed him," Vera spat. Vernon's eyes flashed. "I protected myself." He stood and began pacing. "I knew there'd be a search. So I buried him first. Then used demolition techniques, army stuff. Blew the right ridgeline. Made it look like a rock slide." "You buried him like trash," Vera said, voice low. "And then what?" "You chained my brother." "I kept him safe," Vernon snapped. "From the world. From himself. From people who use boys like him and leave them broken. He had food, books, warmth. I bathed him. tended to his cuts. That's not love, Vera whispered. That's control. He looked at her, hard. Cold. You don't know what it's like to want someone your whole life and never be allowed to touch. Never even speak it. So I built a place where the world couldn't reach us. She could see now, it was all real to him. The bunker. The chains. The silence. To Vernon, it was home. A twisted version of it. I gave him everything, he whispered. No, Vera said. You took everything. She looked back at Benjamin. His fingers were twitching now, barely, but moving. His eyes still blank. Then, faintly, he turned his head. Looked at her. Recognition flickered, like a match struggling to catch fire. I'm here, Vera said again, louder this time. I came for you. Benjamin's lips parted. Dry. No sound. Just breath. He reached one trembling hand toward her, only to be pulled short by the chain on his ankle. Vera broke. She pulled against her own restraint, screaming now. You sick bastard. Let us go. Vernon didn't flinch. Instead, he walked to a storage cabinet and opened it. Inside, neatly arranged, was a rifle. Military grade. Clean. Loaded. He pulled it out, checked the magazine. Vera froze. What are you doing? His voice was calm again. If this ends, it ends on my terms. And then. From outside. A loudspeaker crackled. This is the sheriff's department. Vernon Hartley, we know you're in there. We know you have Vera and Benjamin Wilder. Come out with your hands visible. Vernon paused. The rifle lowered slightly. He blinked, listening. They found you, Vera said. He turned slowly. You called them. I told them everything, she said. They heard you. They're coming. He looked up toward the vent, then at the door. Then his face changed, calculation giving way to resignation. I suppose, he said softly, this was always going to happen. He raised the rifle again, steady now. Vera's heart slammed in her chest. He walked toward the stairs. Outside, the voice boomed again. Come out with your hands up. This is your final warning. Vernon stopped mid-step. Turned one last time to look at her. You should have grieved, he said. But now, you'll stay. And then came the sound no one wanted to hear. A low thump from the roof. They weren't waiting at the door. They were breaching from above. A sudden thump echoed from above. Not footsteps. Not voices. A charge. Vera knew it instantly. Breach team. Vernon froze mid-step on the concrete stairs. His eyes shot up to the ceiling vents. Then to the door. Calculating. Trapped. Vera's pulse thundered in her ears. He turned slowly, the rifle still in his hands. But now, his fingers twitched near the trigger. Another sound, metal scraping above. Then a flash. The flashbang dropped through the ventilation shaft. A brilliant white explosion of light and thunder cracked through the bunker like a bomb had gone off. Vera slammed her eyes shut, turned, and shielded her body over Benjamin's frail frame just in time. The world dissolved into chaos. The ringing in her ears drowned out everything. Her vision pulsed white. Then shapes, dark, armored, rushed through the opening above. SWAT. Gas masks. Tactical gear. Precision. Drop the weapon. Multiple voices at once. Boots hitting the floor. Lasers trained on Vernon. He didn't move fast enough. 2 sharp pops, tasers. Electricity ripped through his body. Vernon screamed as his muscles seized. The rifle clattered to the floor. He hit the concrete hard. Clear. We have 2 civilians, both in restraints. Medics flooded in behind them, knees sliding across the concrete floor, hands moving fast. One of them knelt beside Vera. Bolt cutters snapped the shackle from her ankle. She barely felt it. Another moved toward Benjamin. Unresponsive. Weak pulse. Starting fluids now. Ben, she whispered, crawling toward him. His eyes were open. But they didn't follow anyone. One hand, slowly reached out. Weak. Shaking. It found hers. Their fingers touched. And gripped. Just barely. But enough. I've got you, she said, tears streaking down her face. I've got you. You're safe now. They lifted Benjamin gently onto a stretcher. He didn't fight. Didn't speak. Just stared into the distance as they wheeled him out through the blast door. Vera followed, legs numb, arms trembling. Outside, the world was alive with flashing lights. Ambulances. Patrol cars. Radios hissing. And Vernon Hartley, once the confident rancher with firm handshakes and a clean shirt, was now hunched in the back of a squad car, head lowered, arms cuffed behind his back. He looked smaller. Older. Stripped of the power he once wore like armor. Vera stood there, watching him through the blur of sirens. She didn't say a word. Didn't need to. The helicopter waited on the makeshift landing pad. Benjamin was already being loaded inside. A medic turned to her. You riding with him? She nodded. She nodded. The blades roared to life, kicking up dust and pine needles. Vera climbed aboard and sat beside her brother. He hadn't said a word. Hadn't blinked. Hadn't moved, except for that one touch. But she held his hand the whole flight. She didn't let go. Not when the lights of the trauma center came into view. Not when the doors opened. Not when they wheeled him away again. She stayed by his side through every exam, every whispered consultation, every form. Hours passed. The sun rose. The nightmare was technically over. But the trauma, the weight of it, was just beginning. Later that evening, in the quiet room of the hospital's recovery wing, Vera sat alone beside her brother's bed. Machines beeped softly in the background. For lines ran like veins from his arms. His face, pale and sunken, barely seemed to belong to the man she once knew. She reached out and brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. I'm right here, she whispered. You're not alone anymore. For a long time, there was nothing. Then. His lips parted. And one word came out. Croaked. Barely audible. Miles. Vera's breath caught. Tears welled up again, hot, sudden. She reached down and squeezed his hand. I know, she whispered. I miss him too. The hospital room was quiet. Too quiet for someone who had survived 3 years of hell. Benjamin lay in the bed, pale under the soft blue light of the monitors. Tubes ran into his arms. Bandages covered his wrists. And his eyes had barely blinked since they brought him in. Vera hadn't left his side. Day and night blurred together. Doctors came and went. Specialists talked in low voices. Words like trauma-induced mutism and severe psychological regression got tossed around. But to Vera, none of that mattered. What mattered was that he was alive. He'd made it. But whatever version of her brother was still here, it wasn't whole. Not yet. That afternoon, Lieutenant Chen came to see her. She stood quietly in the doorway, the clipboard in her hand, her expression unreadable. We thought you should know, she said gently. Vernon talked. Vera stood, suddenly cold. Chen closed the door behind her. After the taser wore off, he didn't resist. He just talked. Like he was explaining blueprints. She looked down at her notes. Vernon admitted he made advances toward your brother in the bunkhouse. Said Benjamin rejected him. Miles walked in, saw what was happening, and threatened to call the police. Vera's stomach turned. Chen continued. Vernon said he panicked. Claimed Miles escalated. That he had no choice. He shot him with a .38 revolver he kept in his truck. There was a pause. Then he buried the body in a natural crevice up the slope and used controlled charges to trigger a rockslide over it. Vera didn't speak. Couldn't. He kept Benjamin sedated for 3 days after that. Then moved him into the bunker. Said he was protecting him from a world that wouldn't understand. Her voice darkened. And it wasn't the first time. Vera looked up, eyes wide. 7 other victims have come forward. Drifters. Seasonal workers. Young men who stayed on his ranch, were assaulted, then paid to leave. Most never said anything. A few filed reports. Nothing stuck. Chen let that sit for a moment. He called Benjamin special. Said the others were just mistakes. Vera's hands clenched into fists. She glanced at her brother. He hadn't moved. Not even at the sound of his name. But something about the stillness, it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like waiting. Chen left after a while, giving her space. Doctors came in to check vitals. Nurses swapped out bags and scribbled notes. Benjamin didn't speak. But Vera stayed. All day. Into the night. She didn't talk, not at first. Just read aloud from the hiking journal they found in his bag. The one he'd kept for years. Descriptions of cliffs, weather patterns, stupid jokes he'd written in the margins. Little pieces of the brother she remembered. And then. Right after midnight. She felt it. A squeeze. His hand. It tightened around hers. Slight. Fragile. But real. She sat upright. Ben? His eyes were open. And this time, they were looking at her. Not through. At. She moved closer, gently touching the side of his face. It's me. His lips moved. Dry. Cracked. She leaned in to hear. I didn't forget you. Her chest cracked open. She took his hand in both of hers and held it to her heart. I never stopped looking, she whispered. Outside, the city slept. But inside this quiet hospital room, something had finally broken. Not Benjamin. The silence.